The heavy oak door of the lecture hall slammed shut as Professor Silas Sterling shoved a failed thesis paper against the chest of Elias Vance. I don't care how many citations you have. This work is derivative and clearly above your station. Sterling's voice was a jagged blade of academic arrogance. Elias, a student of dark complexion and a brilliant political science prodigy, didn't flinch. He looked at Professor and spoke with a terrifying, calm precision. Professor, you didn't just fail my paper. You just failed a state-mandated audit. You have exactly 10 minutes to realize that this derivative work was pre-approved by the governor's office before the dean and the state board arrived to discuss your tenure. The sound of heavy footsteps in the hallway signaled the start of a massive academic reckoning. The prestigious halls of Hudson University were silent, save for the echoes of footsteps on marble. Elias Vance, a young man of dark complexion whose intellect was whispered about in the highest circles of state government, walked toward the office of Professor Silas Sterling. Elias was dressed in a simple university hoodie, carrying a leather-bound journal, the result of a year's worth of original research on urban policy. He was the top of his class, but to Professor Sterling, who viewed the university as his personal fiefdom, Elias was an outlier who needed to be put in his place. Sterling was a man who believed brilliance was reserved for a specific look, and Elias didn't fit his mold. He sat behind his massive mahogany desk, a smug, dismissive sneer etched onto his face. "Vance, I've reviewed your final submission," Sterling said, tossing the paper across the desk like it was trash. "I've given you an F, and frankly, I'm recommending you for academic probation for academic dishonesty. There's no way a student like you wrote this." "Professor, every data point in that paper is primary research I conducted myself," Elias replied, his voice a steady, disciplined baritone. Sterling laughed, a dry, mocking sound. "Primary research? You probably just cut and pasted from better students. You people always try to take the shortcut to the top." Elias reached for his research journal to show the handwritten notes. But Sterling wasn't interested in the truth. He was interested in humiliation. Sterling reached out and forcefully grabbed Elias by the shoulder, physically shoving him away from the desk. The physical abuse of power was shocking in an academic setting. Sterling pinned Elias against a bookshelf, his hand pressing firmly against Elias's chest to keep him from reaching the desk. "I said get out. You're lucky I don't call campus security and have you dragged out for trespassing." Sterling hissed, his face inches from Elias's. "I've spent 30 years building this department, and I won't have it diversified by frauds like you." Elias suffered the physical violation with a stoic, heartbreaking dignity. He felt the sharp edges of the book's spines against his back, the very books he had mastered. "Professor Sterling, you are currently committing a physical assault and an illegal act of discrimination. I suggest you remove your hand before you realize who is actually funding your research grant this year." Sterling didn't listen. He ratcheted the pressure on Elias's shoulder, intentionally causing the student to drop his leather journal. "I'm the one with the tenure. Boy, I am the law in this hall." He forcefully shoved Elias toward the door. The student's hard work left lying on the floor. The tension broke as the department secretary, Sarah, a high-status administrator who had seen Elias's work, rushed into the office, her face pale. "Professor, stop. What are you doing? The dean is on his way up with guests," she cried out. "Stay out of this, Sarah. I'm handling a case of plagiarism." Sterling lied, his arrogance forcing him to double down on his mistake. A young teaching assistant named Marcus, the low-status relative in the department, tried to pick up Elias's journal. "Professor, I checked the citations myself. They're all legitimate." Sterling turned on Marcus, pointing his finger aggressively. "You want to lose your fellowship, Marcus? Put that down. He's a fraud." Sterling's refusal to listen to anyone, high or low status, created a pressure cooker of injustice in the quiet office. Elias, pinned near the door, looked at the clock on the wall. "Professor, it's 2 p.m. The governor's office is very precise about their appointments." Sterling just sneered. "The governor? You think a scholarship from some city councilman is going to save you?" The suspense reached a fever pitch as the sound of multiple heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. The door didn't just open. It was swung wide by Dean Henderson, followed by 2 men in dark suits and a woman carrying a gold seal folder. The flow shifted from a private office dispute to a state-level scandal. The woman was the state secretary of education, and she was there to present the governor's excellence award to the university's top scholar. The silence that fell over the room was absolute. The secretary looked at Professor Sterling, who still had his hand gripped tightly on Elias's arm, pinning the student against the wall. Just before the shocking reveal, we want to take a quick moment to thank you for your support, love, and kindness. We wouldn't have come this far without you. Subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue to bring you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city and country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. The state secretary didn't wait for an introduction. She walked directly up to Sterling and, without a single word of warning, physically knocked Sterling's hand off of Elias. "Professor Sterling," she barked, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. "Explain yourself. Why are you assaulting the governor's lead scholar?" Sterling, still blinded by his own smugness, looked up. "Secretary, you don't understand this student. He's been cheating. I had to restrain him." The dean stepped forward, his face a mask of pure terror. "Sterling, shut up. This student is the person the governor handpicked to lead the new state urban initiative. His paper was a keynote for the entire state budget." Elias Vance straightened his hoodie, his eyes cold and precise. He looked at the trembling Professor Sterling, then back at the secretary. "Secretary," Elias said, his voice a razor-sharp blade, "it seems the professor believes my work is derivative. Perhaps the governor would like to know why his primary policy advisor just received an F and a physical assault in this office." The air in the mahogany-lined office felt like it had been sucked out of a vacuum. Professor Silas Sterling stood paralyzed, his fingers twitching near the desk where he had just tossed a failed thesis. He watched as the state secretary of education personally picked up Elias's leather journal from the floor, dusting it off with more respect than she had ever shown Sterling. "Professor," the secretary said, her voice a low, vibrating hum of suppressed rage, "this derivative work you just failed is a foundational document for the governor's $$500 million Urban Renewal Act. Elias Vance isn't just a student. He is the governor's special liaison for policy." The power shift was seismic. Sterling, who had spent decades using his tenure as a weapon to prune the intellectual garden to his own biased liking, was suddenly the smallest man in the room. The fraud he had tried to humiliate was actually the architect of the very state funding that kept the university's lights on. The dean moved to Elias's side, his hand shaking as he offered a chair. The truth reveal was a total collapse of Sterling's academic kingdom. Elias Vance stood tall, refusing the chair. He looked at Professor Sterling, not with anger, but with profound academic disappointment. "Professor," Elias said, his voice cutting to the silence like a scalpel, "you told me you were the law in this hall. You told me that brilliance had a specific look, and that I didn't have it. But while you were busy trying to gatekeep the past, I was busy building the future." The dean stepped forward, looking at the secretary. "Madam Secretary, the university does not condone this. Professor Sterling's actions are a direct violation of our charter and state law." "It's more than that, Dean," the secretary replied. She turned to Sterling. "Silas, your tenure is based on your unimpeachable record of fair assessment. Today, you didn't just fail a student. You falsified a record out of pure, unadulterated bias. I am recommending an immediate revocation of your tenure and a full investigation into every grade you've issued in the last 10 years." The public shaming was absolute. Sterling was forced to hand over his office keys in front of his own teaching assistant, Marcus, and the secretary. As he was let out of the building, his failed paper was still visible on the desk, a permanent monument to his own professional suicide. The arrogant bully had been expelled by the very truth he tried to suppress. Elias Vance didn't just take his A and move on. He used a settlement from the university to create the Vance Excellence Grant, which provided funding for dark complexion students in research-heavy fields, ensuring that no future genius would ever be silenced by an arrogant gatekeeper. The moral resolution saw Elias standing on the stage at commencement, not just as a valedictorian, but as the keynote speaker. Professor Sterling's office was converted into a student resource center, a space dedicated to the diversity of thought he had tried to destroy. Elias's status as a visionary advisor to Governor grew, proving that the pen of a brilliant mind is far more powerful than the biased eraser of an arrogant one. Intellectual arrogance is the most dangerous form of ignorance. It convinces you that you are the master of a truth you only partially understand. When you use your position to diminish others, you aren't protecting the standards of your field. You are revealing your own fear of being surpassed. The truth is, brilliance doesn't wait for your permission to shine, and the person you try to fail today may be the one who decides your legacy tomorrow.